Am I the asshole for reporting my colleague to HR? Background. I, 26 female. Just started my first job after finishing my master's, and work in a department with another colleague, 27 female. Thea, who joined the company 2 months before me. She is currently in graduate school, and I'm amazed at how she is very efficient and fast in her tasks. I noticed that Thea is always assigned complicated tasks despite being new to the company, and I wanted to join the projects that she's in so I can learn from her. Initially, Thea was fine with it, and I learned that she is someone who will implement very strict timelines in order to get things done. I had trouble keeping up because I wasn't used to having such deadlines, but she would just tell me to be faster next time and move on. Recently, she put up a huge whiteboard at her desk which detailed all her meetings and tasks for the month. I was very impressed with the setup, and asked her what the tasks on her board meant. She became very irritated when I asked if there was room for one more teammate, and she finally snapped and said, "Not everything with my name needs you involved." I was surprised at her hostility, but just thought she was having a bad day. But ever since then, she's been very distant and just generally difficult to work with. She wouldn't be as helpful as before when it came to retrieving documents that I need, implemented tougher deadlines, and would just avoid me by going home earlier. I felt that she was creating an overly hostile work environment that was affecting my productivity, and felt like the right thing to do was to report her to HR. I did so, after collecting some evidence, and HR said that they would talk to her. Well, the talk didn't seem to go well because now our boss has told me to just stay out of her way, and removed me from all projects that involves her. Thea has even been moved to another section in the office, closer to our seniors, who I've heard been trying to placate her to stop her from leaving. I'm conflicted as I don't want to ruin my workplace relationships. But it was very difficult to work with her, and I did what I thought was the right thing to advocate for myself. Am I the asshole? Edit. Okay, so I posted this OTW to work and I didn't know my story would be so riveting to all of you. I see that there is an overwhelming vote of you are the asshole, which I didn't expect, and I can't reply to every comment, but I'll address some below. 1. There's a lot of assumptions that Thea is POC and I'm being racist cause I'm white, but I'm not. Why? Because we're both Indians. So I'm sorry to ruin your dreams that I'm some racist. 2. Why did I mention her still in graduate school? Because she's doing her ed, so I'm impressed at her ability to manage postgrad and her job. I couldn't manage it in my master's, so I just wanted to know how she did hers. 3. No, she is not my senior, we both have the same title but different levels, as per the norm in our country. This is also her first job as before she was doing other stuff. 4. The evidence I presented to HR included how she gave me earlier deadlines than the rest of the team, which she claimed was because I was slow, so even if I was late on my deadline I was still on time with everyone else. How she would keep telling me to go find the documents I'm looking for in the folders that she had already prepared even though she doesn't tell me exactly where I can find it, and how she would send me a lot of condescending texts about not being late with the submission of work. 5. Why didn't I follow the hierarchy in reporting? Our seniors didn't find any issue with her methods, which she was open about, and our manager was more concerned about meeting deadlines and not angering our main business partner, which she is the main person handling it. 6. I am not trying to ride on her coattails. I was asking about the tasks she had listed because they sounded interesting, and I was curious to know why hadn't I been included. You are the asshole. Not only did you obviously hold her back, you were getting on my nerves just while reading this. I cannot imagine how she must have felt. You are the asshole. You're being clingy to the point where it's hurting her productivity, and then taking her frustration as hostility. You are the asshole. You were the one who created a hostile work environment by repeatedly sticking your nose in her business. She's there to do her job, not teach you. Helping colleagues is important, but you were being excessively intrusive. No wonder she started distancing herself from you. You are the asshole. You wanted to butt your nose into everything she's working on and got salty when she rejected, especially when it sounds like you've been missing deadlines. Not everything revolves around you loudly crying. Also, I'ma be honest. The company clearly holds her in high regard, so if you think you managed to pull one over her by reporting her to HR when all she wanted was to do her effing work, lol. Am I the asshole for saying my stepdaughter is not entitled to my late ex-wife or daughter's money? I am married to Ashley. Our girls from previous relationships are both 17. My ex-wife was Sam. She and I were never a great couple, but we were great friends and great parents, county parents, so we stayed very close after the divorce. I was aware she had started saving for our daughter's future education. We had reached somewhat of a compromise on how to handle that. I did most of the spending on her adolescent activities and extras, so all her extracurricular activities, hobbies and for the most part gifts that we shared, while she saved for the future in an effective way. I never knew how much was in the account until 2 years ago when my ex died. It was then I learned she had saved a hefty amount and that aside for allowing for her funeral expenses, she had left money for our daughter to use as she saw fit outside of the college money. Ashley and I married 7 years ago and at the time we had discussed money for the girls, etc. I explained I was not saving but my ex-wife was. She had not started anything for her daughter at that point and her ex was not saving either. So we started to put a little by when we could. But we were never able to save huge chunks at a time. After Sam died, money became a much larger issue. Ashley was upset to learn my daughter had a considerable amount more than my stepdaughter for college and that she had money to spare. It only became a bigger deal this past May. My daughter told me she had decided to do community college in her mom's hometown so she could be close to her grandparents for a while, and could still follow her dreams. Ashley then brought up how some of that money could go to my stepdaughter. I told her no. That it was not our money, and even if she tried to suggest that it would be mine seeing as my daughter is a minor, I pointed out that it would be stealing to just take from her and I had never contributed to that fund directly and it would be taking my ex-wife's money. Ashley went off about Sam putting so much away when she knew our daughter had a stepsister and how she was selfish to make her so much better off than her only sibling. I told her she needed to get over that because Sam only had one child to think about and it wasn't her job to think about my stepdaughter or even any biokids I could have had after our divorce. Ashley told me to think about my stepdaughter. I told her my stepdaughter is not entitled to my daughter's money or my ex-wife's money, whichever way she wanted to look at it. She asked how I could be so callous about her daughter's disadvantage. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. Your ex-wife saved it for your daughter, not the stepdaughter, so she's not entitled to any of it. Not the asshole, but your wife is an asshole. For me, this childish behavior would be a reason to break up. Not the asshole. Sam saved for her daughter, her only daughter, not for a stranger's kid who she had no responsibility for. Don't punish your daughter by taking away her college fund that her mother set up for her just because your wife doesn't know how to make good financial decisions for her kid. Not the asshole, but definitely explain to your daughter that it is her money left by her mother. It seems like she has a good idea of what she wants to do with it. Maybe talk to her about financial responsibility and all of that as well. I feel like your current wife might be the type to try and guilt your daughter into giving up some of the money or sharing. Am I the asshole for not giving my cousin my emergency fund? I, 24 female, am a bit paranoid when it comes to money. I didn't grow up in poverty, but times are tough and the idea of living paycheck to paycheck makes me uncomfortable. And #X200B. It's important to mention that now I have a stable, good-paying job, but I struggled a lot during college, since my parents weren't able to save enough for my college fund, so I worked shitty jobs and I was constantly exhausted during those years. I still ended up in some debt and I want to be free of it ASAP. And #X200B. It's also important to mention that I come from a pretty religious family. And #X200B. When I landed this job I decided to start an emergency fund. I put aside a few $100s every month so, in case anything happens, I get sick, I lose my job, etc., I will not end up in more debt or even worse. The only people that know about it are my sister, who also plans to start her own emergency fund after she graduates and lands a good job. And I 100% trust my sister, so I think my aunt or someone else overheard us talking about it. And #X200B. Now the issue is, my cousin's, 22 male, GF, 22 female, is pregnant and they decided to keep it even though they know damn well they can't afford it. None of them has a stable job, inheritance, anything. A few days ago he came to ask me to give him my emergency fund, since he is having an emergency. And #X200B. I was speechless. I asked him what was he talking about, even though I knew, but I couldn't believe someone can have this audacity. He told me he knew I have some savings and he desperately needs them. He didn't even mention giving the money back. And #X200B. I told him those are my savings, for when I am having an emergency, but he pulled the family helps family card. I still said no. And #X200B. While I understand they are in a difficult situation, I still think it's not fair that I am asked to pay for his mistakes. And #X200B. I told him they should think more about what they are going to do in the future and how are they going to support this child if none of them has a stable income, and even if I give them my savings, those money are enough for only a few months, for me. For a family of 3, even less. I did not mention abortion, adoption or anything, just that they are irresponsible for having a kid when none of them is financially stable. And #X200B. He eventually left me alone, but started to tell the rest of the family that I told him to get rid of the baby, which is not true at all. My parents and my sister are on my side, but the rest of the family started harassing us and calling me a godless bee. And #X200B. So, am I the asshole for keeping my savings? Not the asshole. His lack of planning is not your emergency. If his family think you are so awful, why aren't they handing over their own cash? Not the asshole, and far from it. If you give him money, he'll probably come back asking for more. You earned your money. His child is not your burden and not your problem. Not the asshole, it's not even an emergency, he can get a job now and start saving. Why is your cousin entitled to your emergency fund to make up for his poor life planning and irresponsibility? You don't owe him anything. The best way to help him wouldn't be giving him handouts, but offering to help buy some baby necessities like clothes, diapers, a crib, etc. But that's only if you want to. Not the asshole. Am I the asshole for not getting rid of my dog for my dog-phobic stepdaughter? My husband and I have a modern Brady Bunch with my 2 kids, his daughter, and our child together. My 2 are early elementary school, our child together is a year old, and his daughter is 15. His daughter only comes around in the summer, and due to things, this is her first summer visit since her father and I got together in 2020. She's a very good kid, gets good grades. The only issue is that his daughter has a deep fear and disgust around one thing and one thing only: dogs. I was told that there was a general culture against dogs where she was raised. But that culture intensified when there was a tragedy a few years ago involving dogs and some neighbor children. My husband's daughter saw the entire thing, and it stuck with her. I have an 6-year-old golden retriever who my kids and I love dearly. I was worried that it could be a problem, but my husband told me it wasn't a problem because it wasn't the same kind of dog, and she could be polite about it. It took about 4 hours. The day she landed, we came home from dinner and then suddenly hear screaming coming from upstairs. It sounded like an emergency, so we rushed in, and it was because a few dog hairs had gotten on her clothes from Augie walking through the room. She spent hours freaking out over it. She ran everything she got through the wash 3 full times, using an entire container of OxiClean in the process, and deep cleaned the entire room. We obviously did everything possible to prevent Augie from going near her room after that and always kept the door closed, but it only got worse from there. She refused to sit on the living room furniture because it was dirty, obsessively vacuumed anywhere he could have been until I hid the vacuum, and jumped back and screamed any time that he could have gotten near her. It was very clear that something not good was going to happen if they continued living together, so we found an Airbnb down the street solely for her and split time there. It was incredibly expensive but worked for the summer and allowed for some normal visit time. We absolutely cannot afford to do that again for 3 more summers. My husband now wants to get rid of the dog because he thinks it's unfair to his daughter to be kicked out of her home, anyway, even if we did have the money. I will not get rid of Augie. He's part of the family. I love him, and the children that are all here more than her love and are bonded to him. It's not fair to them to get rid of him for a part-time child. We've been arguing about this for days now, and now his mom and his ex-wife are involved because of this affects his daughter. They're all saying I don't love his daughter and am playing favorites. I don't think I am. Not the asshole. Keep your sweet pup and insist on therapy for the kid. Living life scared of dogs is no way to live. ETA. This kid doesn't even live with you. They're just a visitor. You do more harm to the children who do live with you and are bonded to Augie if you rehomed him. Not the asshole, and her parents need to get her therapy ASAP. This is extreme behavior. She is not over the trauma of what happened. Not the asshole. But you should encourage him to get her evaluated for OCD. Being so disgusted by a pet that you have to vacuum constantly is not healthy or normal. You should have gotten this straight before marrying your husband. And #X200B. Can you board your dog when she visits? It should be cheaper than an Airbnb.